Welcome to Preservation Perspectives. I'm your host, Monica Rhodes. Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks in Ohio became the 25th UNESCO World Heritage Site in the United States at a ceremony in Saudi Arabia in September of 2023. The earthworks encompasses 8 sites, a collection of historic earthen mounds designed and constructed by Indigenous peoples over 2,000 years ago. UNESCO calls the earthworks a masterpiece of human creative genius, and also an exceptional testimony to a cultural tradition or to a civilization which is living or which a civilization that has disappeared. The addition of Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks as a World Heritage Site addresses a lack of sites representing pre-contact Indigenous sacred architecture and sites that represent early understandings of science, culture, and astronomy. I'm pleased to have with me today 2 of the people who worked over the last decade to call attention to these amazing historic sites and finally inscribe Hopewell as a World Heritage Site. Welcome to Chief Glenna Wallace of the Eastern Shawnee Tribe and Jen Aultman, Chief Historic Sites Officer of the Ohio History Connection. Jen, can you tell us about the 8 sites that make up Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks?
I sure can, and thank you so much for having us today. So these 8 sites are spread across central and southern Ohio. A lot of people think of Ohio as a place that's only flat, but this is actually the hilly part of Ohio and the Appalachian foothills. So there are 2 parts of the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks are in Newark, Ohio, and that's the Great Circle and the Octagon Earthworks. They were both parts of the larger Newark Earthworks. And then there are 5 sites in Chillicothe, Ohio area, so that's south central Ohio. And these are National Park Service sites at Hopewell Culture National Historical Park. And then in southwest Ohio is the Fort Ancient site. And it's a little bit different than some of the other sites. So the Fort Ancient site and the Newark Earthwork sites, those are stewarded by us at Ohio History Connection. So this is a joint partnership between the National Park Service and Ohio History Connection. And there are so many incredible things about these places. But when you talk about masterpieces of human creative genius, what we expressed to the World Heritage Committee about that is that 7 of these 8 earthworks are geometric earthworks. They're very precise: circles, squares, octagons. They have alignments to the moon and the sun. And so we call them geometric earthworks. And then the Fort Ancient site in southwest Ohio is a little bit different. It's a second type of earthwork from this time period, and it's what we call a hilltop enclosure. So the earthwork there follows the contours of what's sort of a plateau-y area, sort of a flat area. But there is still geometry and astronomy built into that place. So altogether, those are the 8 earthwork sites, and Ohio History Connection and the National Park Service work together to manage those pieces, and we coordinate with each other and the tribal nations whose ancestors built these places.
So I'm curious, having the National Park Service and other local management, nonprofits in the mix, how over the course of the years, how were they able to remain intact for 2,000 years?
Yeah, well, that's a really great question. The thing is that these are really the largest, and they've been well known for a long time to settler colonists, essentially. When European Americans came into the Ohio River Valley, these were places that people started to know of pretty quickly. People were asking, what are these places? Trying to understand, sometimes asking Native people, what are these places? More often than not, they didn't listen to those answers. And so people had a sense that they should be preserved, at least these very large examples of the earthworks. They haven't been perfectly preserved, but some of the earliest preservation efforts, just for example, a quick one, the Fort Ancient site is actually the first state park in Ohio. So 1891, it was preserved, put into the hands of the state because people recognized it as an exceptional place. And then in Newark, those earthworks, the citizens of Licking County, Ohio, actually voted to increase their own taxes to buy out a farmer to help preserve the Newark earthworks. So even though there were a lot of sort of misunderstandings about how the earthworks were built and who built them, there was still a sense that they should be preserved. So the truth is, though, that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other earthworks that weren't preserved in these ways. So there has been a great loss, and we're lucky to have the ones left that we have in some ways.
Absolutely. One more question for you, Jen, and then Chief Wallace, I want to bring you into the conversation. So Jen, could you tell us a little bit about how did this World Heritage designation come about? Like, what were the beginnings of it? Who were some of the major players in this effort?
Yeah, and here I have to give kudos to Chief Wallace and my colleagues, because I came into this project in 2016. So for the last 7-year stretch of it, but it had gone on really since the late 90s and early 2000s. So our senior archaeologist for our World Heritage program, Brad Lepper, he had been working at the Newark Earthworks since the late 80s and early 90s. And in that time, he thought, gosh, you know, these places, they are as spectacular as World Heritage sites. So, you know, the idea was in his head, and then Chief Wallace visited and had the concept of World Heritage in her head. And then Dick Shields, who was a professor at Ohio State University Newark Earthworks Center, he started that center to get the word out about the earthworks. He was thinking World Heritage, and all these people were in conversation with each other at some point, and it just, you know, it gelled. And actually Chief Wallace should speak about that, because she was there and I wasn't. I just get to be the recipient of, you know, that great history of people really wanting to go for that highest designation in the world for these places because they knew that they deserved it, and just being passionate about that for over 2 decades. So it's really incredible what they've done.
Absolutely. So Chief Wallace, that's a great segue, and I'm curious. So you come into this to this project, and you have a vision for World Heritage. Can you share a little bit with us about that vision and some of the strategy that you developed to get the site in partnership with others to where it is now?
Well, Jen gives me far more credit than I deserve. I need to go back a little bit with my background to tell you how I arrived at that point. And I have been chief of the Eastern Shawnee tribe since 2006. So we're getting ready to go into 2024. So we're talking about 18 years. But for 38.5 years prior to that, I was employed at a community college in Neosho, Missouri called Crowder College. And there I had various assignments, but one of my longtime assignments was being the director of the Fine Arts Communication Fine Arts Design Division. And in that, we live in a very rural area where we are not exposed to many things that are World Heritage or too many cultural variations. And so we had a program where we took trips, international trips, and we were able to take our students and our community to try to widen their perspective and their knowledge of cultural. And in that, over a period of 20 years, we traveled to more than 70 countries, which meant that I was visiting many World Heritage sites throughout the world. So in addition to that, I had a 3-year assignment that turned into a 6-year assignment that was associated with the Lewis and Clark expedition that in the year 2000, a humanities director of Missouri came to me and indicated that in 2003, it was going to be the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery, which began in Missouri. And my tribe is located on the Oklahoma-Missouri line. The tribe itself is in Oklahoma, but I live 2 miles from it. And in those 2 miles, I've crossed over into Missouri. So he asked me if I would represent, because I'm Shawnee, if I would represent the Native Americans in Missouri in that anniversary celebration. And he wanted me to particularly talk about all of our tribes. And I told him I was not able to do that because my tribe was the first to be removed in the Indian Removal Act And then we got down to only 69 people. In getting down to 69 people, we suffered a tremendous loss, which meant we lost much of our culture, we lost much of our language, we lost much of our history. And I said, no one knows my tribe's history. We've never documented, we've never had time, and I can't speak about something that I don't know. He refused to take no for an answer, saying this was the year 2000, that this was not going to occur until 2003, so that I had 3 years that I could research my tribe. I couldn't very well tell him no, so in those 3 years, I researched everything that I could, went to Ohio as many times as I could, talked with as many different people as I could. So that was research for 3 years, and then 3 years of giving those programs. That brings me to the year 2006, which there was going to be an election for a chief. And at that time, I had taught for 38.5 years, both as an instructor and as an administrator. I had my retirement locked in. I felt that I probably knew as much about my tribe as anyone did because I had served for 18 years on our business committee. So put all those together, I ran for chief in 2006, was elected. In 2007, Ohio State University had a lecture series upon Indigenous people and had guest lecturers, and one of those was an author from England, John Sugden, who had written a biography of Tecumseh. I wanted to hear John Sugden speak, so I went to Ohio to listen to John Sugden. The next day, it was a requirement for the guest lecturer and anyone who wanted to accompany to go to a place called Newark Earthwork Mounds. Even though I had spent 3 years diligently researching, never in any of the books, any of the materials published, even in Ohio, was Newark Earthworks mentioned. So when I went simply because of John Sugden. I was amazed when I arrived and when I saw what I saw. And because of my experiences of travel, because of my 3 years of research with Shawnees, which meant researching Ohio, it was abundantly clear very few people in Ohio even knew of Newark Earthwork Mounds. And I was appalled to learn that there is a golf course on top of those Newark Earthwork Mounds. The day that I was there, there was a golf tournament. They were busy. The cart drivers were quite busy shuttling people from one location to another. And when we tried to walk to the viewing platform, we were actually asked to leave. We didn't leave, we went, and I was able to climb that platform and look out. And the minute I looked out, I knew that I was seeing something as spectacular as the 50, 60, 70, 80 places I had seen that were designated World Heritage. But I was not the one who had that vision, because there were a few people there that Jen Aultman mentioned who had that vision before I arrived on the scene. They just didn't have enough Native American voice to support their getting enough publicity for them to move that vision forward. So that was the start. And when I met those people, when I walked down from that platform that day, my first reaction was just amazement and such excitement that this had been preserved, that it was in existence. But then the longer I stood there, the more disillusioned I became. How did this happen that a golf course is on top of a sacred site? How did this happen that no one knows about such a monumental undertaking that I knew was years and years of age? So I walked off of that platform crying and saying the biblical verse, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And unless they know what they have done, there's no way that we can change this. So that became my mission at that point.
And Chief Wallace, can you share a little bit with us about the Eastern Shawnee's tribe's connection to Hopewell?
Our connection to Hopewell is the same as I say for all Indigenous people. There are several sources that will say that Shawnees and the Miami tribe were definitely present in those areas. But I don't claim that Eastern Shawnees or Shawnees built those mounds. I say I give credit to all Indigenous people. They are a testament to all of our culture. And it would have been impossible for just one tribe or even two tribes to have built all of those places, because as Jen pointed out, these are wonderful places that have been preserved, but there are far, far, far more that have not been preserved and have been destroyed, are no longer in existence, and we no longer are able to see those. So preservation of what, and I said, there have been 40-some tribes who called Ohio home at one time, but now there is not a single federally recognized tribe in Ohio. It was most important to me that perhaps the people had to leave, but that did not mean that the accomplishments that our ancestors did had to be destroyed or disappear as well. So that became my driving motivation.
Yeah, and I'm sure, positively sure, that when you both were in Saudi Arabia last month, that was, I can't, like, actually, no, I can't imagine like what that must have felt like to be, you know, over 10 years in the works for this and to have this as a World Heritage Site. So this question is Jen and Chief Wallace. What was it like, and what did it mean to be there for both of you when this site was officially designated by UNESCO?
Well, first, let me say that whenever Jen came aboard, that's when 100% effort, dedication, determination that we were going to get this. We had somebody working full time, and I don't believe we would ever have been able to do it without Jen Aultman. I just give her credit, hard work, and the hard work has not stopped. Actually, another phase, we're just beginning another phase that's going to take as much hard work. So I'll let her talk about what it meant to her, because she's actually spent, as far as hours, far more hours on this than I have.
Oh, thank you, Chief. That's so generous. And I could say the same thing. We wouldn't be here without Chief Wallace, that's for sure. So, and that's the great thing about this. There's so many of us. So one of the important things, if you see a photo of us from when we were in Riyadh or a video, I really want to stress it's the partnerships that made it happen. So we had Ohio History Connection staff. There were, we had 4 of us. We had one of our staff member who is actually a tribal councilman at Okegum Band of Potawatomi. So he was there. We had representatives from the Miami Nation, Wyandotte Nation. Chief Wallace was with us, representative from the Seneca Nation. And we had our partners at the National Park Service out of the Hopewell Culture National Historical Park in Chillicothe. So, and then honestly, you know, it was like 5:30 in the morning back home when the inscription actually happened. And there were just people messaging all morning, we're up, we're watching, we're waiting, you know, how much longer? And so I think that is the thing, and standing at that there in that moment is, it's really hard to realize, like, this is going to be it, right? As far as the inscription goes. And we know, and we've been saying for a long time, the inscription is really just the beginning. It's the beginning of creating the experience and telling the story and welcoming people and doing a lot of hard work too, in terms of, you know, making sure the real history is getting out there and that people really know that these are Indigenous sites and that they're sacred. So when you stand there in that moment, it kind of all, at least for me, kind of crashed down on me, and I probably felt like a little bit paralyzed and a suspension of belief, right? That when the gavel came down in that moment, they were World Heritage Sites. And then, as you can tell, Chief Wallace is a really powerful speaker, but what really mattered to me most as far as how that inscription happened was we were very lucky to have Ambassador Michael Ratney, the US Ambassador to Saudi Arabia, with us. And he spoke a few words, thanking, people who should be thanked at this important moment. But we've wanted it to be turned over to Chief Wallace to make the rest of our remarks. And she did that. And that is the moment for me when I was listening to her, when the emotions came in, the sort of paralysis left, right? And just hearing her speak, it's like we all together really did this.
I think that's one of the, for me, like one of the beautiful things of the work of preservation, cultural heritage is it just isn't one group or one person. Like, no one person can ever take credit for any of the things that have been preserved in our nation. It takes multiple people from multiple different perspectives coming together and agreeing that this one vision, this site, like Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks, is one of the top things that we should be thinking about. This is what universal value is about, and we can all agree and get on the same page about that. And so the way that preservation brings people together is something that I'll always get excited about. So with that in mind, so the work has been done, the inscription, the site is inscripted. What do you hope people come away from Hopewell Cultural National Historical Park, the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks? What do you hope they take away with them when they visit these 8 sites? And that's Chief Wallace.
I'd love to hear Chief answer that.
Either one, yes.
I'm sitting here looking at a TV screen, and we're now at the last day of October. And this happened in September the 19th, so it's been over a month. And yet today, tears still come to my eyes and my voice quivers when I think about what this means. I will be 85 years of age this month, in the month of November. And I have known from the moment of that children can realize that I am a Native American. You always want to be proud of, and I am proud of being Native American, of being an Eastern Shawnee, of being an Indigenous person. But I have to say that the word that I have heard my entire life to describe us has been the word savages. And when I'm sitting there in Saudi Arabia, and when we have worked on this I've worked on this for 16 years. When I hear that the qualifications for being a World Heritage Site is indicating that it is a masterpiece of known genius. My people have never been referred to as geniuses. And to hear that recognized by the world, and to think, people in the United States, you have to hear this. You have to realize that our culture is a beautiful culture, and that it has to be recognized that it's going to go far beyond just looking at this physical place or these physical places. It has to bring credit to our culture. And I remember when we talk about that, it's not one person that does this. It's not one organization. It's a multitude of people, and we're hesitant to even mention names because of forgetting others. And we don't want to forget others because everybody gave so much and such contributions and stayed with it so long. And to know that now perhaps people will go back and look at history and rethink history and perhaps give some credit where some credit is due to people and to a culture, and that a culture can survive and now be recognized by others. And in this nomination, it indicated that the word genius is used. When I gave that acceptance speech, and remember, I came from a background of teaching, and my classes were always 1 hour and 15 minutes. And I was given 2 minutes to accept this. So to do a 2-minute speech to try to express your feelings, it's almost an impossibility. But I kept thinking about it, and I thought, this isn't just genius. This is an uncommon genius. So if I added anything, it was adding that word uncommon to it and letting everyone know that our culture, our heritage deserves far more recognition and far much more appreciation that has been accorded in the past. And that's what I think I'm the proudest of, and what I think can begin to change so many things in the future, so that the young people today don't have to associate their culture with the word savages.
Beautifully said. And Jen, you mentioned that this is not just there's more work to come after this. This is just the first piece. How can people learn more?
Yeah, well, we have a website that went live pretty much the day that inscription happened, and it's hopewellearthworks.org. And we also, of course, have social media for Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks on Facebook and Instagram. And while we were in Riyadh, our chief marketing officer and our marketing team did a really great job of documenting that. So if people are interested in what that looked like and in watching what the inscription looked like, all of that is there, especially on the Facebook page. But definitely follow those places because, you know, as Chief speaks, I think for those of us who have the job of stewarding these sites every day, we recognize that one of our tasks is to help Ohioans who drive past or see or know about these sites, but maybe who don't really understand what they are, to really be able to experience. And that means having these ongoing partnerships with the tribes whose homelands we live in. Right. And so what I hope you'll see, and I know that we're working towards this, is that you're going to hear more Native voices, you're going to hear about more partnership. And so where we are today and what we offer visitors, you know, it's a great experience. They're amazing places. But if you come back in 2 years and 5 years and 10 years, you know, my hope would be that you will see those relationships deepen and you will be able to hear from Native people whose ancestors built these places, and that we're all working together to steward them. So yeah, I would love to have people go to the website, go to the Facebook. Again, it's hopewellearthworks.org is the website, and follow along. It's going to be a great journey.
Thank you, Jen. And thank you, Chief Wallace, for being my guest today. This was an amazing conversation. And for those that are tuned in, please be sure to follow the ACHP on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in historic preservation. I'm Monica Rhodes, and thank you for joining Preservation Perspectives.
Thank you, Monica.